now tuned in to the tap in. We talking again. Yeah. Welcome to the podcast. Might talk a little shit, get a little brash. Might drink a little bit, smoke a little bit. Vibe a little bit, laugh a little bit. Yeah. Hosted by Fidel. Tell it like it is, only tell it real. Live every Tuesday, you know the deal. We talking again. You now tuned in
Live
to
on the
Tap
Tap
In.
Studios. I am your host,
Now
Fidel
tuned
Avalana
in
Jr.
to
This
the
is
Tap
Talking Again
In.
podcast. I'm here
Now
with Ana and
tuned
Greg
in to the
Duron.
Tap In.
That's it, right?
Talking
All right.
again,
You know, because I said Ana
talking
Duron and Greg Duron. It's like, kill two birds, one stone. Just take out one Duron.
It is better.
It's better. It's better this way.
I just,
Hey, you know what?
I just met her.
Oh, you just met her.
Some chick I picked up at a party for that.
How long have you guys been married?
Too long, brother.
That's usually my line. We're going on
You stole their line.
11 years.
11 years?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thanks.
Oh. High school? You guys met in high school then, right?
No.
I assume.
No.
You guys look really young. Huh?
Oh, thank
You
you.
guys aren't, what, 30? No, 32?
No.
No, you
A
guys look very
Decade
young.
more.
There you go.
43.
43.
41.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go. Go ahead. Dale.
How we met is through friends.
Okay.
Yeah. Through Paul and Pancho.
Yeah.
We belong to her older sister and I. We belong to an organization called Mecha. So I don't know.
I remember. Is Mecha still around? Like the organization?
Yeah, Mecha's still around.
Oh,
it was
I
kind of the
remember-
conversation we had earlier.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to change the to
Right, yeah.
Mexa or something like that.
Yeah.
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 To put the X,
Yeah.
substitute CH with the X.
When was that founded, Mecha?
Mecha was started in the 1960s, and it was started during the Chicano movement in the 60s, and I believe it was started at UC Santa Barbara, and it originated from El Plan de Santa Barbara,
Mhm.
which was this like declaration, which was this manifesto for Chicano empowerment, to go back into their communities, empower the communities, to get into colleges, and it was a lot of political activism going on in the 60s, and that's where Mecha originated.
Yeah.
I mean, from my understanding.
right.
No, I mean, I majored in history, but I'm not like a historian, I
Yeah.
guess. But yeah, that's what I've always been taught. Yeah.
Okay. Because I only remember it from when out of high school, when I was debating about going to college. I didn't go to college, but when I was inquiring in it, those were some of the groups that were that they were pushing, like, hey, you should think about joining this group and this and that, so to me, I've never heard of it,
Yeah.
but again, we talked about this before, that Chicano, but I never was really taught too much of the culture, the cultura. Obviously, not to say that I'm disconnected from it, because I grew up with it and everything, of course, but
Mhm.
when I moved out here to West Covina, a lot of white people here.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what it
Yeah,
was,
I had-
prominent,
Yeah.
But I mean, eventually after this time, it's so diverse. West Covina, like, there's so many different races.
Yeah. Now it's West Cochina, bro.
West Cochina. Oh my God. You know how many times my cousins from Southgate and Pico Rivera would tell me, oh, West Cochina all the time. Fucking Cochina or whatever.
Yeah.
But I heard all those jokes. But yeah, so again, I'm not that disconnected, but I know I'm not as informed either, because there's a lot. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today was one of the holidays that's coming out, this weekend is Dia De Los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, November 1st, November 2nd.
Yes.
Right? Well, first, why do we celebrate 2 days, November 1st, November 2nd?
So originally, Dia de los Muertos was a tradition from the Aztecs and the Toltecs, and ranged from Mexico all the way down to El Salvador. So when the Spanish came and they pushed the Catholicism on there, they couldn't suppress this festivity. They wanted to get rid of it. They couldn't suppress it. It was that big where people were like, I'd rather die than not celebrate this.
Wow.
So what the Spanish did is they condensed it into All Souls and All Saints and All Souls Day, which is November 1st and November 2nd. So when they did that, it changed from the Aztecs turned it into Dia de los Inocentes, which is the first, it's for children, and then November 2nd, which is everybody inclusive, your elders that we've all lost.
Yeah.
So, and it went from being a month-long celebration to 2 days.
It was a month long.
It was a month long. That's why you see a lot of the flowers, and it was actually not in November. It was actually towards August and September, October, like during like the autumn festivals and all the harvest that was celebrated. But they kind of like, all right, let's compromise. We're gonna give you 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's some places still do it. You start preparing for it for a long time.
So when the Spaniards came out here is when it went down to 2 days, and they did change it to All Souls, All Saints.
Yeah.
So it's damn. So then even back then is when they started to mess around with all of our days and holidays and landed on certain, because it makes sense and it makes dollars. I'm assuming it was making dollars back then.
Oh yeah, because they had a mass.
Yeah.
So you have a mass, you give your donations, and it was that.
Wow.
Interesting conversation I had with the African American professor that I had in college, and I kind of had mentioned that, like, him and I got into this conversation. I believe the term is called like syncretism, when you have like two cultures that kind of collide, like obviously the indigenous Mexica, Aztec, Mayan culture, and the Spanish culture.
Yeah.
Sometimes they blend, right? Syncretism, I believe that's what it's called. But I remember when I mentioned, like when Ana says, like the Spanish could only conquer the Mexica, the Aztecs, for so much, and they had to let them celebrate certain holidays. Obviously, honoring the dead was probably a very touchy subject, right? Yeah. But I had a African American professor, and he goes, yeah, well, it's kind of like with the African slaves, like the Spanish and the French and the British slave owners could not get African slaves to not beat that drum. That was just like something that they couldn't do. And I was like, wow, I thought that was like really interesting and stuff, and that's where and then he said, like in Cuba, where you had a lot of plantations and slaves, that's where you get the congas and the bongos and salsa and Afro Latin jazz. And so I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, a lot of, I mean, and I know a lot of the, that music, everything that you hear now, it all goes down to something like that, like the drums, the music, goes to something where that they had, you get a connection from it, like that they never were able to take that away from them. Just like the music, you can't take that away from us. And it's corny, but like Footloose, right? We want to dance. You're not gonna take that away from us, right? No, but very corny.
I like that analogy.
But you know what I mean? But it's kind of like the same thing here. Like, that's the Aztecs. That was our thing, right? Like that, celebrating the dead. It wasn't like, it was a way of life. You live. You're born. You live. You die, and then you go to that afterlife, right?
Yeah,
a lot of people may not believe
for them.
But
It's. I mean, I know we say death and they die, but for them, it wasn't actually like a death. It was a new beginning.
Yeah,
you're starting a new life in a new world. So it was always a continuation. It's not meant to be sad.
Yeah.
I know nowadays you think death and you get kind of sad. Like we all do. It's part of life. But at the same time, when you're celebrating somebody, you're honoring their presence and the life that they shared with you and the family. So it's very, I think it's very important, especially if you're going to try to continue that type of like honoring system and then passing on traditions.
And I think it's very important also to mention that because we're talking about Dia de los Muertos and honoring the dead, that we don't overlook or we don't skip the part of mourning. There's obviously a mourning period that you do have to mourn, because that's what the body and the soul needs, that to the mourning. But I think the celebration part is more of the remembrance, right? To remember them and to celebrate them, right? Have the good times, remember all the good times, the memories. Part of that is like we were talking about earlier, like ofrendas, right? Like you bring over some of the things that they enjoyed, either drinking, eating, or activities that they like to do. Maybe repeat those same activities. How important is that? Or how does that tie into like the Aztecs?
So the ofrendas, the altars, were either positioned near the cemetery or within the family, like wherever the family was, and they congregated and celebrated. So you would honor whoever you want, whoever was your elder in that family, and they would commemorate. Obviously they didn't have pictures back then, so they brought stone skulls, or the real skulls in some of the tribes, and they would, this is who we're looking at, and this is how we're celebrating it, and they're visiting us because they've lived in this other world, and it's a connection between this world and that world, how we don't lose our ways.
Yeah.
So is that why like the ofrendas like sometimes have little trinkets or ornaments that remind you of those people that have passed? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's
Yeah.
like I had told you, like when my altar, hopefully they'll have a bottle of mezcal there.
Yeah.
You
If
know,
you know Anna, then you're
there
gonna
you
have
go.
a
Take
bottle of
notes.
mezcal.
So, and
Yeah.
it would be nowadays it would be a picture of a loved one, something that they love to eat, their favorite meal, their favorite drink, and say a hobby or where they worked, or things that they love. Dodger fan, sports fan, whatever memorabilia you want to bring to the table, the altar, to honor them with that. So if you have, for example, for me with my grandma, she was a great cook. I don't remember what her favorite meal was, but I remember my favorite things she used to cook was like this roasted chicken
Yeah.
and little galletitas. So if I were to do that, I would have her picture a plate of food of the roasted chicken and then little galletitas, and then her favorite flowers which were carnations, along with other family members too. So it kind of, some altars get pretty elaborate and pretty big depending on the size of the family, and sometimes I've seen one where they honor one specific elder that year, and everybody partakes in that. So it's what you can think of how your ways of honoring that elder.
I like that you said it's how your way of doing it. It's
Yeah.
not, there isn't so much of a right or wrong way of doing it. It's just the way that you're doing it, like the way that you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of for us what we're celebrating the dead, but we're doing it for ourselves as well, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So like you said, like you don't know if that was her favorite dish, but it was a favorite dish that you remember her
Yeah.
from. The chicken.
Yeah.
So I that's pretty cool that you could, again, it's not, there isn't a right or wrong, but these are just some of the ways that people do it.
Yeah,
right?
they're guidelines. Some people don't do food. Some people do the flowers. They do pictures, depending on if whatever that person was, their favorite thing. That's what it's decorated from.
Yeah.
So it can vary from items to colors. Papel picado or no papel picado, or you decorate the altar at certain color.
Yeah.
You have a very big altar to, I've seen shoebox altars where
Wow.
you do little miniatures
Yeah.
and little pictures, and it's pretty much how you want to celebrate, and there's no right or wrong, as long as you're honoring that elder for that.
Yeah. And so right now you said like back then, right? They bring stones because they didn't have, they thought they would break them, or what do they, chisel stones, right? So that's kind of why you see right now the skulls that are like oval shaped, like kind of, they're not perfectly skull looking, right?
The Spanish with the mass production of sugar, that's where it came from, because a real skull would freak them out, being Catholics. So they would do sugar skulls made out of amaranth, quinoa, some kind of grain that would hold with the egg, since they already knew they brought in baked goods. So they would, this looks similar to that, but it's not creeping us out.
Yeah.
Let's start this. And it's also a way of them making money or adding that. And you have other types of food too, like pan de muerto is another.
What's pan de muerto?
Pan de muerto, it's kind of like pan de dulce, and it's usually made around that time. And when things starts getting colder, you start baking more.
Yeah.
Now it's just a sweet bread, and you put a cross in there to symbolize, like, it's another offering for your elder that's coming to visit you.
Yeah.
So it's something sweet since they've been on such a long journey.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Get your pan de muerto with some champurrado.
Yeah,
right?
chocolate.
A little bit of mezcal. make that champurrado go down a little bit easier.
Yeah. So you have that. Yeah. There's.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the flowers, because we see a lot of the orange. There's a lot of bright colors, right?
Yeah.
Dia de los Muertos. But that orange, so I think it's called a marigold or something like that.
A marigold,
the
simpachuli.
marigold?
So it's
that's the Spanish word. I read it and I was like, oh man.
It took me a long time
okay.
to
Wait, can I
pronounce
say
it.
Simpachuli?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, I said it right. Simpachuli.
There you go. So simpachuli, it's used a lot. It's got a very earthy, pungent smell. I like it. Some people don't. It just depends. But it's also a way of communicating to your elder where to come. It's kind of like a guide. Sometimes you see petals that like you leave a trail of petals or you decorate your altar with those. There's also different types of flowers that are used, but the simpachuli, since it's so bright, it's so vivid, it's kind of like the beacon calling, like this is your, this is where you come from. You're calling the spirits, and it helps them guide them back to the family. So you have that,
What's the whole idea of the smell, like the scent? If it's the dead, so that can they smell? Do they
yeah,
not lose
like
the sense
it
of smell?
kind of it guides the sense of smell, but it's also a flower that's very abundant in that region, and it's, I mean, like you said, it's a lot of vivid colors, so it's also like the vivid life. Like you want to color your life, you want to remember the good times, so that's part of the brightness and the colors of that, so it's part of it.
And then also that's like November 2nd, November 1st for the Dia de los Inocentes, right? For the kids, the children. They bring orchids, right? White orchids.
White orchids. I'm not too sure about the white orchids. I know it's white chrysanthemums and baby's breath. Purity. It's also meant for mothers that pass during childbirth. That day is safe for them also, if I'm not mistaken. So it's those types, and then carnations also. So there's. But the marigold is the main one. The main one. That's you'll start seeing it in the stores, and I mean, I've seen local supermarkets start selling them also.
Yeah, my wife picked them up a couple days ago. And I was like, hey, look, I did a little bit of research on that. But no, it's one of those. I have like the calacas, the calaveras, all part of that whole experience. Of that little difference of death. Horror. It kind of mixed in, but you find like an even keel ground, right? Like where it's like peaceful, and you start to, but it's because we're remembering and all that stuff like that. You find that relevance. How do you two celebrate the Dia de los Muertos? You guys have altars set up at your home, and
we've always had altars.
It kind of doesn't go down. It kind of evolves from place to place, but we usually have a space, and we have pictures of loved ones. We have colors, we have, flowers there. And it's kind of like, I think it keeps us grounded in a way of, like, don't mess up. You got a lot of on you too, And it's also like, we love having people over, and we love entertaining. And I think it's also a good conversation starter. Like, who's this? Like, oh, this is my Dia, or this is my dad. And, you start doing that. But I know you're supposed to take it down, but it's also... nowadays, like I said, there's no real rules for altars, but I think it's also, because I have a Catholic background, so there was also some kind of altar. So I think that's my replacement for that religious to, real people.
Well, again, we go back to it's your way. That's the way you're doing it, and the way you're celebrating it. But like you said, you're not supposed to. So is there a guideline of when you're supposed to take it down?
Usually after the second. But I think it's also because
to be like 1 month long, and then take it down.
Or you start preparing, like since the weather's gloomy, like making the sugar skulls kind of hard, so it's best to make it in the like towards the end of summer,
like
fall. Where it's nice and dry, so they get hard. A lot of prep work goes in there. If you make your own paper flowers, or if you're buying fresh flowers, you kind of have to time it so nothing kind of goes along. Or if you're inviting people to make it a community altar, you kind of have to make time for people also, or what they're bringing. So you have to make out the space and stuff. So
we've had friends that, we've seen their altars, and they've had like Bob Marley and Kurt Cobain photos. Like
Selena,
really interesting things
Prince,
like that. Prince, things like that.
That's
David
pretty
Bowie.
Cool.
So
it's not exactly their family, but it's people that they appreciate. They love,
absolutely.
I did. I remember because there's so many celebrations, and I went to a museum, and an artist did an altar on the India Maria the year she passed away. Which, the Mexican icon. She's a lady that holds the turkey. So she did one on hers, and I was like, that's pretty cool.
Nice.
That she got honored. So it's what you want to make of it, and who you're honoring. But also kind of like making it your own. So it's kind of why my face is painted half. It's a little bit of the old school with the new school. So it's kind of retaining the values that I appreciated growing up from my elders, but also making it into my own and this time of age, and me trying to pass that on to my family members, the youngins, nieces, nephews.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, and I think that's very important. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation and kind of put it out there, is because I don't want it to lose itself, and I know, I mean, this world is huge, and it's not just one person not doing it is not gonna, die out and, and go to sea or extinct. But just in my home, and my family, like I again, I didn't grow up with altars, and ofrendas, and we didn't grow up like that.
Yeah.
So we weren't taught that, but I want to maybe start doing it, teaching it to my kids, because I think we talked a little bit about this. My parents, they're born in Mexico and they came out here, but they didn't really, not that they were hiding from being Mexican, but they didn't really show too much of that like Mexican side, like,
Yeah.
and us now as first generation, I mean, being chicanos, right, is we weren't really taught that. But as I'm older and I have kids, I want them to kind of learn that stuff,
Yeah.
and I want to educate them. And how can I educate them if I don't know about it? There's only so much that I can make up. I'm a pretty good storyteller, but I might run out of stories.
Yeah.
So how are some of the ways that we're teaching our youth today?
Like I had told you before, like there's a lot of especially here in California. We're so close to Mexico. We're the biggest minority here. So it's lots of museums. I mentioned the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach. They have held Day of the Dead festivals. Downtown LA, Placita Olivera, downtown Whittier. It seems like every city that has a big Chicano presence has some kind of celebration.
Yeah. Like nationwide or worldwide?
Nationwide too.
Probably,
Also,
right?
yeah. I have. I know.
There's a lot of raza in the East Coast and
yeah.
South.
Oh, yeah.
Chicago has a big celebration too. Texas, and now that we're migrating into other states, I know Minnesota is one of them that's picking up on that. Oregon, and I've heard certain cities in Canada even.
Oh wow.
Because we're migrating
Yeah,
everywhere. But there's also, this is our version of honoring the dead, but almost every culture has some form of honoring their dead.
Yeah.
So it's not exclusive to Latin America. I know Japan has one, India has several, and different cultures that I would love to learn about, but I don't know off the base of my head. So they all have some form of festivities to honor their elders.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we do kind of maybe not educate ourselves so much into it or indulge in it so much, but kind of relate ourselves to it a little bit, because we should be able to embrace other people's cultures, just like we expect others to do with ours. We should do the same with theirs. That's one of those topics that I have, conversations that I have with a lot of people where like, oh, they come over here with this and that, but I go, well, hold on, you're getting upset about them not appreciating your loud music, but hey, we already know that when we got a party, the tamborazo comes, like, though that's part of your, so let them, but that's just that was a little side note on that, but no, I mean, it is important that we embrace other people's cultures, not only that.
Well, what's interesting, I wanted to point out is because you asked me, like, how do you teach that to the younger kids, and obviously, we're talking about how you teach them, and you teach them just the basics, or you take them to a lot of these festivities that are going on, all over the Southern California area. But it is important because you guys kind of mentioned something about the Spanish and, through colonialism. But when the Spanish came, there was a lot of indigenous cultures and rituals and holidays and traditions that were wiped away from us.
Yeah.
And that goes on today, because a lot of people think like colonialism, colonialism is over, but colonialism wasn't an event, it's a process, and it's still going on today.
Yeah.
And just to touch on that, my experience, I went to Catholic school in Baldwin Park, and I went to St. John the Baptist in Baldwin Park.
Yeah.
And the nuns that we had, the monjas that we had, they were from Spain. They were like all from Spain. They were very conservative.
Yeah.
And I remember like, there was a lot of, the majority of the students there were Mexicano, especially first generation, and Filipinos. And I remember like the nuns there, they kind of like frowned upon anything that was perceived as indigenous or Mexican and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know if they did it purposely or just the way that they were raised, but they kind of were like, look, you guys are like Catholic now. Like all that is behind you now. And stuff, you know? I remember I had a nun, one of the nuns, Sister Rosario. I asked a very innocent question. I was like, why is the Virgin Mary stepping on the moon? You know, because everybody's seen that statue of the Virgen de Guadalupe, right? Like, why is she stepping on the moon and all that, you know? And I remember her telling me, because that's the Virgin Mary telling the Indios and the Indians that you no longer worship the moon and you no longer worship the sun. Now you worship me and you worship Jesus Christ, you know? So that's part of the Spanish disruption of our culture and stuff. So the fact that you're even having that we're having this conversation and you even have that idea that you want to teach your kids, it's very revolutionary, man, because that was wiped away from us for the past 5-6 centuries, you know? So, I mean, that's great that
it was, because it was something that was celebrated for over 3,000 years. Yeah. To be condensed all that celebration to 2 days. You know, it's like going to a party and like, okay, it's been an hour, bye. You know, it's like, no.
I mean, that's why, like you guys touched on it, Catholicism, Catholics, it's All Souls, you know? And my mom, she's like 5th, 6th generation Tejana. So like she knows nothing but like Tejano culture. Yeah. And she's from South Texas. So if you ask her about Day of the Dead, she kind of like, I don't want to say she frowns upon it, but she just doesn't know about it, or she thinks it's like creepy. Yeah. Which a lot of Mexicanos think it's creepy, right? Like skeletons and all that. But my grandparents were from Aguascalientes, and like he grew up celebrating that, going to the cemetery and painting their faces and ofrendas, and he knew about that. And I always used to trip out how he knew so much about that. He was very comfortable talking about that. And my mom, she thought it was like what I said, the nuns taught us, like something evil or something to be like ashamed of, you know?
Yeah, like maybe it had to do with her not understanding it so much, right? She didn't learn it, she didn't understand it. So
absolutely,
that's probably the major reason why. That's why again I say we should probably embrace all cultures, you know, and the way that they celebrate things, you know. And, but I think the first step is at home. You know, at home is just where you teach your kids. You know, like I think it sucks that a lot of people expect teachers to teach their kids everything. You know, it's like, wait, what are we gonna do as parents? Hold on. You know what I mean? Because I hear that a lot. Like, well, why isn't my kid learning that at school? And I'm like, well, hold on, you could teach that at home. You know, like that's an etiquette thing. You know, you teach that at home.
You know, and to touch on like when kids they're introduced to those kind of things, and I'm sure you've seen like Aztec dancing, right? Like danzantes, right? You go to Placita Alvera and you see them dancing. But I remember the first time I saw danzantes and the drum and stuff. Like I remember like getting emotional hearing that. Like it was something
I still get like chills and my heart
you get chills, right? You're like,
and
why do you get that? Why do you get those chills? Because you feel like some kind of connection to it, right? Because when you see it, you're like, yeah, that's a part of me and stuff like that. And I might not practice that religion or I might not practice those traditions, but it's like something that you're familiar with. So that, because it's in our DNA, brother. It's in our blood, you know. And so are these holidays and stuff. So we need to like celebrate these. We need to embrace this.
I think especially now more than ever, where it seems like with this quarantine, they're taking so much away from us, so much of our rights and liberties, where it's like, we can't celebrate things like this anymore. Our Friendsgivings that we try to go to, like, they're trying to keep you away from all that. And I don't know how. Now you said that they're still doing stuff like this, like in Placita Vera, like where
I don't know how it is now when the day of COVID, but I know it's open, but I don't know if they're actually celebrating. I don't know if they will have ofrendas. I'm not too sure on that, but I know like a lot of museums are doing virtual stuff, like I had mentioned. I know even the National Mexican Museum in Chicago is doing things on there since everything is online now. Yeah, you're able to see it. I'm sure if we research it, there'll be some celebrations, but probably controlled or via internet access.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Well, by the time this airs right here, it'll be the day after. Yeah. But Dia De Los Muertos. But I'm sure there's a lot of home kits now. Or I mean,
Oh
available,
yeah.
right? Like
Well,
where you
there's.
can.
I mean, you can go and look it up. I know National Geographic has an article. Um, you can just type up. There's a bunch of blogs, a lot of YouTubes of how do you do it at home, and it doesn't have to be super elaborate, super expensive. You don't have to buy anything pre-made. You can buy the stuff to make it at home, and
Yeah.
a lot of things already are at home. I've done like the mascaras of the skulls like out of paper plates.
Yeah.
We can do that. Color it up with markers. Have some string. You can do it at home. You can do an altar with the old tablecloth. Have pictures.
Yeah.
Just to get them introduced. The kids and even people that don't know about it. And it's just about honoring our elders and our family members and having a good time about it. I know sometimes it gets a little sad and dismal, but at the same time it passes really quick, and then you start laughing, you start telling stories. Remember when this guy
Yeah.
did that?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
man. And you start having a good time, but then it's also part of the congregation of being with loved ones, and you have that connection of
Yeah.
like we celebrate it, and then it becomes a tradition, like like Christmas or whatever get together we have now. And you can do that, because I remember when I got introduced and I started doing sugar skulls, we had nieces and nephews, and I'm like, let's do it with them. And now that we're older, like I remember when we did it with our nephews, they still remember that. Remember when we did that and my skull came out all crazy looking, we had feathers, and those are memories they're going to have. And I know some of them now have children, and they're like, are we going to do that? We're going to wait for the kids to get older and show them that,
Nice,
so
yeah.
you want to keep that going. And it feels really good to have that family connection. And then, oh yeah, my friend wants to go here and they want to expose their kids. So it's just a continuation of education of, our culture.
I like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of the kids too, like, like that movie Coco. You know what I mean?
That was big, right? I think that movie,
2017.
I watched it and I was like, God, this thing's like very. I mean, it could be like a documentary of Dia De Los Muertos.
It was a dope movie.
They did their homework.
Yeah.
They got the right people to contribute. They had they had a lot of great ideas. They didn't make it small. They didn't. I really liked it, and I'm really critical of that type of stuff since even before Coco came out. I had remember telling him like in around 2015, like, yeah, this is gonna blow up, and he's like, how do you know? I'm like, I just saw some Day of the Dead stuff at Target, and never had I seen it at Target before, And he's just like, oh man, so now you can find stuff all over the place, coming from all over the place.
And that movie, from what I remember, right, like Coco, it was when they premiered it in Mexico, it was premiered like it was dubbed in Zapotec and in Spanish and stuff like that.
So they really didn't want to step on anybody's toes, so they did their homework.
Wow.
So that's pretty big.
Movie. The biggest, the harshest toes you could step on are the ones that you really can't. The dead, and those were the really, really.
So it was done. It was done beautifully. The meaning behind it and the family and passing it on to the newer generation, the art of it, and just the colors, all that. It was really cool to see that, and
just to show that it's not scary.
It's not scary. You get a little sad, because it's not, that person's not with you anymore. But then at the same time, it's a little bit Dr. Seuss. Don't be sad because it's gone. Be happy because it happened.
Yeah.
So that's the part that I really like to emphasize, where like, you had a chance to do that. Or even if, the young ones don't know these people, you're able to tell stories about them, and they keep those stories alive. So
every year they'll see those same photos and then ask different questions every year. And it's something that, that you can celebrate, but I remember seeing something that my cousin posted, and like I said, we don't celebrate that. Even like my cousins, we don't have altars. And I noticed one of my cousins did. My cousin Anthony has one at his house, an altar, and for Dia De Los Muertos, and he has pictures. And now some of his cousins are and brothers and sisters are dropping off pictures of their loved ones, kind of like opening it up, like to ours, like, hey, let's fill this up. And I thought that was pretty cool. That he did that, and that's why I was telling you about next year. Like, we missed the ball on it this year, but next year, this is why I'm doing this, so we know we can inform ourselves. But next year we're gonna do the same thing. I want to do that, and then maybe, like you said, have a workshop.
Yeah,
bring the kids in there. We
Yeah.
talk about it.
Sugar skulls, pan de muerto. It's not
Mhm.
hard to make.
Yeah.
You know, it's a, you know, you can make it a family affair, like the family dish, or you know, a certain color. You know, it's just bringing that exposure and education about our culture, and you know, even other people that don't know about it, or you know, like you said, it's not scary. You know, and uh, there's a lot of things you can do with it to make it, you know, family friendly, or just, you know, adult friendly too. And
Yeah.
or you know, sometimes people need help with grieving, and sometimes it's a good stepping stone. It was for me when my grandma passed away. I didn't know how to grieve, and
Yeah.
you know, it's always like, oh, you're just sad, and I was just like, there's got to be more. So when I got introduced to this, I'm like, this is like perfect. Like I felt like I should have known this for like the get-go, but now I'm learning now.
Yeah.
And you know, then you know, my parents, I was like, hey, you guys, we really didn't grow up with it, we don't know the basis of it, so they really didn't shy away from it. So um I remember one year I was like, mom, can I do one for grandma? She's like, yeah, let's do it. So she got in it too. And
Yeah.
you know, and just doing stuff like that, like it was just something for her and I to do, and for, you know, my other siblings. So it was pretty cool to do, and it helped me. So when like the following years, it just got a little bit better. And not to say that it was more fun, but you know, you figure out like, oh, you know, I'm gonna do paper flowers for this year, or this year it's gonna be more brightly colored, or yeah, it's a good planning process. It keeps you busy, and um it's a good, like, it makes me feel real proud of like my culture. That's
Yeah.
you know.
How much of the research have you done, you know, since you've been introduced to it?
Every
You know, 'cause-
year, like even when we started communicating, I was like, you know what, I need to, you know, because I knew just about the sempachuli, but I didn't know about the other flowers.
Yeah.
So that's new this year. So I was like, okay, let me do that. A lot of it's mainly just, it depends. Every region has their own style. There's different artists. There's just so much history throughout the years that it kind of changes. And then, you know, and I'm sure the kids now, when they grow up, they're gonna be like, yeah, I remember a movie Coco, and that's when my family started doing it.
Right.
So they're gonna see that. And there's just a lot more exposure, which is kind of, it has a good and bad side, because it comes, like I said, it's a lot more commercial.
Yeah.
And Mexico has a lot of, well, even here in California, there's a lot of great artisans that make the sugar skulls. They make the flowers out of gum paste, and that's an art in its own.
Wow.
And just different altars, and they make canopies out of the marigolds. So it's an art form that's now being commercialized. So like you'll find stuff like papel picado that it says made in China.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, man, like, you know, that's the bad part about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still exposure. So you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. You know?
Well, like everything else, you know, you know, the how-tos, how to do it, or how to do it easier is just buying it, you know. But like the best thing, I think the most important thing is building the altar, and and like making it yourself is probably gonna be a better connection that you're gonna have with those loved ones that you're trying to celebrate, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to do mine next year all like handcrafted, like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, not buy anything that we don't have to, like a skull, like try to make it
Yeah,
ourselves,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because just more meaning to it, you know.
Yeah.
Especially that's something that you want to teach the kids, and you know, again, not to be commercialized, but just because I think it's important that we learn it, you know, like just for ourselves, you know.
Yeah, you can do your own papel picado, put it on strings, and then, like, you know, the next weekend do the sugar skulls. Then that's a whole process, because you have to wait for them to dry.
Yeah.
And then nowadays the kids want to eat them, but it's like a whole lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that was new to me, because when I learned how to make them, it wasn't about eating them, but when you start teaching a bunch of little kids, it becomes harder to control, and they want to eat it. And a good way, just a nice tip for next year, if they want to eat it, just tell them, you don't know where it's been. There's been a lot of hands in here, so just don't eat it.
Right. Well, I think a lot of kids now know not to touch. You know, with the quarantine and COVID, they're like, I don't know.
Oh, they're still gonna want to. They're gonna.
Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah.
But there's a lot of things, and you can start off small. Like, you know, I've seen just simple altars just with pictures. It doesn't have to be decorated. You know.
Yeah.
Some have bunch of flowers, different. It doesn't have to be the sempachuli, but it could be whatever flowers you like. Whatever, you know, if you want to do real flowers, paper flowers, tissue paper flowers, like when you see in quinceañeras, you can do all that. So it's very pretty much like what you want to make it.
How
so
you want to make it. Yeah.
Sure, the future generations will appreciate that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it's to me, I think it's really important to teach like the kids about Day of the Dead because, you know, it's no secret like it's been like commercialized. You know, like, you know, a few years ago I had mentioned to Anna, I was like, yeah, like I saw this like white chick, you know, and she was all Day of the Dead, like calavera tattoos, you know, and I remember initially thinking I kind of got like a little offended by that, you know, and I was like, well, okay. But then, you know, at the same time, I was like, kind of like appreciated it, you know, when I really thought about it. And I was like, that's cool, you know.
Form
like,
of flattery,
maybe. Yeah, you know, she thought it was beautiful enough, you know, that art form and that style and our culture to, I mean, permanently put it on her skin and stuff. But at the same time, you don't want it to just become a Target Walmart holiday, you know. So.
And that's the other big thing too, where it's not a Halloween costume.
Yeah.
For some people, and I mean, I've been, what am I gonna be like? Oh, I'll be a calaca, you know. But you have to say I'm a calaca, but not say I'm a Day of the Dead person. That's not like, it's not a Halloween costume. It's
that's so interesting because Anna and I for a few years, one of the great Day of the Dead celebrations is at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's nice. But I remember going there like maybe 10 years ago, and it's, even though it's a big event, they have like bands and there's food and vendors, but you did see that like hipster crowd coming in, and they were just like wearing like Freddy Krueger mask and stuff, and maybe they just weren't educated on the holiday, but they thought it was maybe like a Halloween party, you know. What I mean? But it's, I mean,
but they've been celebrating
it's
it.
cool. I wasn't like offended by it, but I was just like, whoa, you know what I mean? Freddy, okay, Freddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's not that type of party.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. But it's a really good event and stuff, huh?
Like, you can enter an altar building contest, and it's great to see. Like, if I was talking about making it personal, we've seen some great altars at the Hollywood Forever. Just Joey Ramone, or even remember the family that did their altar about the boxer in their family.
Oh yeah.
And like the rings were the marigolds.
Oh yeah.
And it was beautiful. And you know, it's all kinds of families, and everybody's there, and you're welcome to talk to them about it. And you know, there's always a winner. There's different type of contests that they have, but it's a great exposure.
Yeah.
When it got the last time we went, it was pretty big. It was like an outdoor concert. But if you go there during the day and you see the altars, you get the cultural reference, and they have danzantes, and they have you know, the folklorico dancers, and they have even a little bit of teatro that they do there with the different communities and organizations that they work with. So it was just a great experience there too.
Yeah. Well, going back to like what Greg was saying about commercializing it. Yeah. And I think this is why it's important for us to talk a lot about it every year if we have to, and talk about the stories of why it started, you know, like let's not let the society take over something like this, like they did with Christmas, you know, like Christmas was supposed to be a certain holiday. They sell it a certain way. Now it just seems like it's money, you know, like how are we going to make money off of this? Or we're going to sell for it? Like, even Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Nobody thinks Thanksgiving anymore. Thanksgiving dinner, it's Black Friday. You know,
I mean, I'm guilty of that too, bro.
Well, I mean, I'm like, hey, you can't pass a good deal, bro. You can't pass a good deal. But no, but what I'm saying is, though, you know, we're starting to lose that connection. You know, the true connection of the meaning of it. You know, why are we doing this? You know, that's why. But again, it's not so much that something that schools need to teach it. I mean, we all need to talk about it more. We need to talk to our kids about it more and explain to them. But just having that open dialogue and open conversation about it, and allowing these questions that, you know, you may think, oh, that's a dumb question, but hey, man, that person really just probably does not know. Like me, there's a lot of things that I just did not know of it. Yeah. And not just Dia De Los Muertos, a lot more things, you know, like just my own, you know, heritage, you know, Mexicans. That's why, like, next week I'm going to have someone on about Chicano culture, because I really want to know my culture more. I want to understand it more. But you know, I know some people out there might be thinking, well, that's silly. You know, you look as Mexican as my fucking grandma, you know, but I need to learn it. I don't know it, you know, and I don't feel embarrassed asking, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, Chicanos, Latinos, Mexicanos, like we're not like monolithic people, like, you can't just like put us all in one category, like obviously, our friends and stuff. Some of us are like really into Morrissey and the Smiths and the Cure, and some of us are just really comfortable with rancheras and Mexican music. And some of us live in St. Paul, Minnesota. Some of us live in Texas. Some of us live in the Inland Empire, Orange County, LA.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's important because you can't really just put us in one box. You know what I mean? There's so much out there with our culture, especially now because we're growing in numbers in the United States, so
and I think it's also part of life where or in time things kind of lose their meaning. Like I was telling you about the Katrina by Jose Guadalupe Posada. He made it as a political statement of he was making fun of the bourgeoisie at the time in the 1880s. And nowadays, when I was starting to get exposed in the early 2000s, there were people dressing up by her like, oh, look at, she's so fancy. Yeah. And it was just like now doing that, through the years and learning about his prints and all the different art forms there are. It's like, no, she wasn't like that. But I think it's also because of everything that's involved with it. Some lines get blurred because a big portion of spending time with family is playing games. Like loteria is a big part of, building altars, and you find out. So they think of la dama. Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, like she's like a dama, but back then. But no, you kind of lose that. And I think a lot of times things will start to evolve and become something else. Yeah. So it's part of what you have to kind of be careful with. But then at the same time, if it changes, you just kind of have to go with the punches sometimes, because you don't want to discourage the younger generation of saying like, no, you're doing it wrong. That's why I don't like telling people there is no wrong way. Like you do it your way. If you feel like that's your connection, more power to you, because I'm sure not going to tell somebody if somebody tells me, yeah, that's not your way, I don't care. This is the way I like it, Yeah. So
like, I've been saying that forever too, man. It's like the same thing. Yeah. But like, I going back on that, like, I always thought Catrins, when they were dressed like Catrins, I always just thought Sunday's best, church, Sunday's best. So you dressed up nice. That's kind of how I chopped up. Or also was, most of it was celebrated back in the day, and back in the day, that's just how they dress. Everybody always kind of dressed. Yeah. Well, you would think in pictures and movies, everybody had like always dressed nice. Nobody was wearing your white T-shirt and your jeans, which is probably more of the truth, right? Yeah, they were probably mostly dressed in white jeans, white T-shirt, jeans. Yeah, or even back in Aztecs, I mean, they were wearing tantarans. Yeah. So how much more were they wearing?
It's the deer that I killed this morning, fresh, the brand new pair.
Yeah. But no, I think it's really cool and it's special. Just again for the art. I mean, I know that some of the we see a lot of this like with the tattoos, shirts, murals. You see a lot of this stuff, and it's out there.
I mean, the makeup industry is big. They do Day of the Dead palettes now. Like, you have the black eyeliner. You do this. It's been really, that part of it is being that. Even when I was learning, I was like, oh, she looks so cool. And then getting more information and finding out, we're like, well, why did they start painting their faces, and what are you representing? So a lot of times, depending on the location that you were, you're representing that person and you're doing that. But at the same time, I was reading a magazine, and it was, I forgot, I'm horrible with names, but she was an artist, and she was talking about how she painted her face to kind of represent her elders and the old school and these older traditions, but then she's adding her own spin as an artist. Yeah. So for myself, I'm not a fan of the whole face, because I like the old school, new school mentality of like, I want to keep these traditions, but nowadays I got to make it my own and kind of make it relevant to the times where, somebody's going to make something they're even selling COVID piñatas. Yeah. So there's gonna be an altar of like that type of stuff. So it's you just kind of have to go, like I said, like
COVID piñatas. I think I saw that.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Instagram.
Yeah, right
next to Donald Trump.
You stole my line. Right next to the Donald Trump
Yeah.
one.
It's like, oh, who do you want to kill more?
I've seen those, man. Yeah, but definitely you'll see that at Placita Olvera. Right?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
But no, it's really cool. Like I said, just informing yourselves. You know, if you guys out there do it, you know, it doesn't, you know, Google it. But everybody says Google it, just Google it. But do more research because Google, you know, again, everybody's a writer nowadays, right? Like
Yeah.
you can write whatever you want. You can say whatever you want here on the podcast, and then
Look
people
for
might
books.
take it. Yeah.
Look for books. This isn't really good. You can look up Day of the Dead coloring pages for kids, and you start doing that, and there's so much. I mean, you know, that's the one thing about Google is so much information, but also do a little bit of reading of where you're getting this information from.
Not all information is the right information or good. I should say good.
I mean, I would even say get a Coco coloring book because some of those images are wonderful, and you know I love the fact that they use the little Xolo dog because I just recently found out last year that dog is portrayed as a guide. So there's different levels to that underworld. So the Xolo is one of the spirit guides to one of those levels. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Damn, we didn't even get into that, huh? Like that other world, right?
Yeah,
like
that's a whole different.
It's a whole nother podcast, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. So there is a little bit of a fine line though between, like, you know, because Day of the Dead, when you hear that and you don't know about, you know, Dia De Los Muertos, you think Day of the Dead, like, are they trying to resurrect people? You know, like, it's a little confusing to people that don't know, but that's why, again, it's important to talk about it. Let's have this discussion and not just. You know, I don't think nobody's playing Ouija on Dia De Los Muertos.
I don't touch those things.
Yeah, no.
That's a whole different kind of scary.
I stay away from all that stuff too. So no thanks. I'm good. But no, I mean, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. You know, I know it was brief, but we said a lot. I think a lot got said.
Yeah,
it was very informative.
Just
you know?
It's never a bad thing to want to learn. You know, and like you said, like nobody wants to sound dumb, but at the same time, you know, I know a lot of teachers say that, but there are no stupid questions because if you're trying to learn, that is not, you're trying to gain information. And that's always a good thing when you're trying to seek new things and trying to have some kind of connection to your culture or even to figure it out. Like how I found out about different cultures is because, I mean, I love all types of food and that's my connection to other cultures. So it's like, what they do, what kind of food? Like, can I taste it? Like, what's up? Like, I'll be your homie for that day. So you have that type of thing too. So it's
and then, you know, it's kind of interesting because you and I, before we started the podcast, like we got into this conversation, like when you moved out in West Covina and I lived in West Covina for a little while, you know, and it just like, it was mainly like Caucasian, you know, like white folks and stuff, you know, and then when I moved to Pomona and then I started going to college in the Inland Empire, you know, you kind of were like, for me, you know, being like a second generation Mexican American Chicano, you know, like, you know, that whole generation, like they skipped a generation for me and stuff, you know what I mean? So, you know, I kind of had this young hunger and yearning to learn a lot of these things and stuff, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's great, you know what I mean? Because, even during this process, you meet a lot of cool people and stuff, you know what I mean? People who know these things or, you know, obviously Anna had more of a familiarity with Day of the Dead than I did and stuff, you know, especially going to private school. It just was like frowned upon. Right. Yeah. So.
No, I agree. I mean, and going back to that is like I was never, you know, growing up the way we grew up here in West Covina, I was always like, you know, that Mexican kid and, you know, and I'm like, I hardly speak Spanish, you know, like, but I mean, I was that Mexican kid. Even though, like, I must say, I did speak Spanish and I knew Spanish. I just hardly spoke it. You know, I don't even speak English either, but I don't speak it well, I should say.
Spanglish podcast, remember?
Spanglish podcast. No, but do you know? Yeah, you know what I mean. So when I was screwed up, you know, with the white folk over here, you know, like in West Covina, because you're just this Mexican kid. But then I go hang out with my cousins, and they're from Southgate, Pico Rivera, like, you know, over there, I'm the white boy from West Cochina. You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, so I was screwed. And I told you about the movie Selena, when Selena's dad goes, when you're Mexican American, You know, you go to Mexico and you screwed up over there, and then you're over here in America, you're screwed here. So we're screwed both ways, you know?
Yeah.
It's just harder to be Mexican American,
Yeah.
or now we should say Chicano, Latinx, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's I don't want to say that it's difficult, but because we make it difficult, because si te vale madre, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do want to educate myself more in it, you know? And that's why that's my goal, is to start learning more about it, and then and teaching it to my kids, passing it down, because I don't want it to disappear with me, you know what I mean? Like, because I didn't teach it to my kids, now they're growing up not knowing shit about their culture, you know?
Yeah, and then you also have to take into consideration and factor in the political climate that we live in. You and I mean, we have a administration that clearly they've been hostile towards Mexicanos, Latinos. I mean, there's no secret about that, right? And you and we're at that age where, like, you know what? Fuck Donald Trump and what he says about Mexicans. Like, we know that shit is bullshit. But to a lot of the younger kids, who knows what they're thinking when they go into school and stuff? They're like, am I a criminal? Am I a rapist? You know what I mean? Like, am I not? Is this who the president is talking about? Is that what I am and stuff? You know? So you have to be very careful with that younger generation, because you don't know how it's affecting them. You know, they might be embarrassed to speak Spanish, or they might even be embarrassed to have those names like Fidel and Juan and stuff like that, that, you know, you and I maybe just took for granted and stuff. Yeah. But, you know, little kids, man, they watch TV, man. They're plugged in, you know what I mean? And, you know, you don't know how it's affecting them. Might be ashamed. And that's something that we really
I think that's how I grew up, you know, was being embarrassed to speak Spanish. That's why, again, I say I knew it, I just didn't speak it, you know, because I was embarrassed of speaking Spanish, you know. Yeah. And to the same note, you know, like I think you mentioned to me before, where I ran into a friend, or not, well, at the time I didn't know him, but I saw one Mexican dude, you know, in the classroom. Now I don't even know if he was Mexican, because to me, my ignorant ass, I just thought everybody that was Latino was all Mexican. I didn't know about Salvadorians or Nicaraguenses until they told me they were, and I was like, oh, my bad, you know. But you know, so I see somebody that's like, hey, matches my skin tone, talks like me, like, hey, so I was able to kind of feel a little bit more. He made me feel a little bit more comfortable, like I'm not the only one in this classroom, you know. So, but because I felt like that, I felt that, hey, you know what, maybe I shouldn't speak Spanish so much, you know, because that was my first language, was Spanish. I'd grown up in El Monte, you know, and with parents, Mexican household, that's all we spoke. But somewhere around there, and at 5 years old, it doesn't take that long, 3-4 years, less than that maybe, where you just avoid it, or you just, you know, and then just go English all over.
Yeah, because, you know, little kids, they learn at a young age how they're going to assimilate, how they're going to acculturate. Yeah. And they adapt to their environment, you know. And if that environment is hostile towards their culture and their skin tone, or the way they talk, or their parents, they're going to get in where they fit in. You know? I mean, we talked about this earlier, but like, my parents were from Texas, you know, they're Tejano, and they're very proud of being Tejano. So when I grew up, I lived in El Monte. I went to private school in Baldwin Park. Then we moved to Pomona. But like, it was weird because like Spanish was spoken in our house, but I wasn't like 100% fluent speaking Spanish, you know? And I kind of was like caught in between, because like I felt comfortable with my friends whose parents were from Mexico, you know, like, because my parents, like, they weren't, I don't know, it was kind of weird. Like, I would go to some of I would meet kids, especially in West Covina here. Yeah. And they seemed like they were like 3rd, 4th generation Mexican Americans. And like, I don't know. I mean, they were cool and everything like that, but I just didn't really connect with them either, you know, because my parents were Tejanos, and, you know, my mom made menudo on Sundays, and she made chilaquiles, and, you know, she did it, bro. You know what I'm saying? But they were Tejanos. But at the same time, like, I felt like an outsider, even with my friends whose parents were from Mexico, because during Christmas, you know, when all Mexican Latino kids, they go to Mexico. Like, we would go to Texas, bro. You know what I mean? We would go to Texas, you know, and then they would, you know, and so as I got older, you know what I mean, I connected more to more of my first generation friends. Yeah. You know, and, you know, like, when I used to be at their parties, quinceañeras and weddings and stuff, you know, like my my Spanish game had to step up. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, and so I kind of went that route and stuff. And even as I got older, I wanted to know more and stuff, you know, and you know,
like you joined in Mecha.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of like my friends and stuff that I knew from whatever, sometimes they'd be like, bro, like you going hard being Mexican, bro. Like,
so you Mexican now?
What's up with that? You know what I mean? And, you know, but I just had to like, you know, make them understand it was more of just like a cultural, spiritual thing too, you know, I wanted to know more about it and stuff, you know, and because I don't want to say I was robbed of it, but I think my parents, they came, you know, my dad passed away in February and he was 84, right? He was 83, 84. And my mom, she's in her 80s, you know, and they grew up in Texas when, you know, there was signs there that said Mexicans need not apply. You know what I'm saying? And my mom would talk about the small town that she grew up in. Like once like the sun went down, like you had to get out of downtown. You had to go back to your community. And same thing with my dad. You know, when he went to, his name was Eduardo, you know, at home he was Lalito, but when we went to school, he was Edward. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with my mom, you know, Maria Lisa. But like when she went to those Texas public schools here in the 50s, 60s and all that, it was Mary Duron, Mary Castro and stuff, you know? So I think I'm not blaming them and stuff because, you know, at the time, I mean, come on, bro. Like, you know, there was a hostile environment, violent, lynching, you know what I mean? So they kind of grew up in that generation where it was frowned upon to be Mexican or speak Spanish and stuff. And, you know, my mom and dad, we've gotten into these conversations and sometimes we've even butted heads over this stuff, you know what I mean? Because they would kind of understand, like, why are you in Mecha? Like, what's up with this? Like, why are you trying to go so hard on, you know, being Chicano and being Mexicano and stuff? But it's because I didn't want to lose that culture. I didn't want to lose that Spanish language and even the indigenous culture because then I was introduced to me. So, yeah, man, it's just it's crazy times that we're living in, and so I commend you for even trying to like get your kids to learn.
But that's why I think it's so important because it's so easy for us to just lose it, you know, and like, you know, you think a lifetime is a lifetime, but it really isn't that long, man. It's quick. Yeah, it goes so quick, man. So that's why I'm like, I'm almost 40 years old, and I feel like I'm just now. I really want to really indulge into it, like you did back when you joined the Mecha. So I don't want to say I'm too late because I don't think it's too late to do it, but I wish I would have done it before. You know,
it's never too late to learn something new, and we're constantly learning. You know, finding new things, or you know, just more resources out there that help us get this type of knowledge that not only do we want, but we're craving to have that type of connection.
And you know, what's crazy because, you know, I was in college in the 90s. So I think an organization like Mecha was good for me, but I'm not even promoting Mecha and stuff because the younger generation, like the world is at their fingertips with YouTube and social media, and they can learn so much, you know. And now you have like ethnic studies and public schools, and you know that's becoming more of an issue. I know the Cal States, especially because of the Black Lives Matter movement. So what they're I believe they're having a required for freshmen at the Cal State universities, an ethnic studies course and stuff like that. So man, there's so many resources for the younger generation. It's incredible. It's incredible.
It's gonna be a game changer. All of this, you know, we've had way too much time to sit at home and think about a lot of things going on, what's right and wrong, or what we feel is right and wrong. Yeah. So I think this is a game changer. This 2020.
Oh yeah.
You know,
it makes you reflect on a lot of things.
A lot, yeah.
And you kind of figure out like you long for certain connections, be it Day of the Dead or, you know, like you said, like Christmas is no longer the same thing, or Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And it's like, why isn't it? Like, let's go back to like things that would matter.
Yeah.
You know, besides like, can I get a good deal on a, you know, iPad, you know? Yeah. So it's kind of like, you know,
not to knock on it because we're still going to get a good deal, right?
Yeah. I mean, I work at UPS, brother. So,
so, you know,
keep on shopping. I don't want to promote shopping.
No, but yeah, you make a lot of sense. I mean, on all counts, you know, I think it's important, and go out there and do your own research. Again, I always say it, you know, just because you heard it here doesn't mean it's right, you know, or it's true.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. And then, you know,
I'm not an expert on it. It just, it's something that I've loved for such a long
Yeah,
time.
so-
And when somebody wants to learn, I am that person where like, hey, if you want to learn it, I'll
Let's
come
do it,
and
yeah.
I'll show you what I know,
Yeah.
and then maybe I can learn from you whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it just builds a bigger community and a stronger
Yeah.
bond, and we just exposure to great things and wonderful things to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I hope whoever's watching this doesn't think like I'm trying to come off as an expert, because I'm not. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Not.
It's just still a process. I'm still learning all these things.
Right.
Every day, right? Like it's
Yeah.
always something like, what does that mean? Like, what is that? Like,
Mhm.
yeah. So I mean, it's just a process and
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm still learning a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Every day I'm always learning about something.
Yeah.
We all are.
That's a good thing. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you very much again.
Yeah.
I
Thank you for
appreciate you guys
having
coming
us.
out here. I appreciate the mezcal. Look at that.
Oh,
That's
it's-
really good. We're not promoting. They're not a sponsor, but you guys check it out. It's really good. Of course, the Modelos. You can't go wrong with the Modelos.
Thank you for these modelos, brother. The Dodgers won.
The Dodgers
Oh,
won. Yeah,
Dodgers
again, this
won.
is a week old, so by the time they're listening to this, we were probably already champions,
Yeah.
right?
Don't
So-
jinx it.
Oh shit!
The Lakers won the championship.
The Lakers won the
Yeah.
championship.
And
So
then LAFC, I just heard are gonna go to the playoffs. I mean,
they haven't been following, man, MLS. So all right, there you go. Well, we have a lot to celebrate right now.
yeah.
All right, man. Well, you go. That's it. This is Fidel.
This is Anna.
Get a little
Right.
rash.
Talking Again
Drink a
podcast.
little
We're
bit,
out.
Smoke a little bit. Vibe a little bit. Laugh a little bit. Yeah. Hosted by Fidel. Tell it like it is. Only tell it real. Live every Tuesday. You know the deal. We talking again. We talking again. You now tuned in to the tap in. You now tuned in to the tap in. You now tuned in to the tap in. We talking again. We talking again. Come on. We're live.